Hello and welcome to the NHL Best Bets. Yesterday we got third team to the final four of NHL playoffs when New York Islanders won Boston at home 6-2. It was a pretty even game, but Islanders was a little bit better, and then they scored two goals at the end to empty net. So maybe the 4-2 was closer to the actual happenings on ice. We had Islanders with the very good odds at home to win the game, and then we had Brock Nelson scoring at least 1 point. He scored two goals, and that resulted green for our picks out of this single game of last night. Tommy, what's your take out of this game and this series in overall?
Yeah, this game was pretty much as we expected. Not the score 6-2, the last two goals in the empty net, maybe not counting here, but we expected it to go over. We expected Islanders to take the game to Boston's end. They did exactly that, and Brock Nelson, one of the better guys in front of the net, and their goal scorer, so he scored two goals. So pretty much precisely as the simulations told us this was going to happen. We had our doubts, but never doubt the system. So it was a good win for Islanders. I do think that in this series, Boston Bruins have a little bit something between their teeth now to go forward. They did not play their best game. Maybe they are in this mode of some sort of transition after Chara left. A couple of changes in their roster, but they should have done better than they did against Islanders. Maybe the first round was a little bit too easy in that way that Boston didn't need to overcome these sort of problems against Capitals that now they had against Islanders. So defensively not so good. Maybe Tuukka Rask not at his best all the time, but a team can't only rely on their goaltender. So what issues Boston had was that it was only the one line that could turn the games. Also now two goals scored, both on power play, both by the same guys. So if you rely so heavily on one line, especially against a team like New York Islanders, defensively very sound, they are shutting down these guys. You have to do better than that in the bottom six, and for those guys who are supposed to support the offense. So a bad series from Boston in that regard, and especially defense. Not much support there. Usually Bruins have had a lot of goal scorers from the bottom six, from those defenders who are not that skillful maybe with the puck, but are always stepping up in the playoff time. But now that was nowhere to be seen. So if you take a comparison to New York Islanders, Islanders did exactly those things that I just mentioned. So they got scoring from their bottom six, they got scoring from their defense, a lot of support in the offense, and played, of course, a great hockey defensively as they always do, and that's something that Barry Trotz is. I need to take my hat off to this guy because he's taking these teams without that many star players into long runs in the playoffs, and that's something that Barry Trotz does really well. So a great series from New York Islanders. Maybe a little bit disappointing for Boston Bruins in the way that they performed.
Yeah, Boston Bruins was definitely lacking some power from the secondary scoring and even the second line of their offense. And let's take an example, Mr. Taylor Hall, who played first in Buffalo, scored there I think 3 points or so during the regular season, and then postseason it wasn't too much more when he was scoring 5 points in 11 games. So let's see where this first pick of the 2010 draft will head now, because the performance that he was maybe trying to show for the Suitors wasn't close enough for any kind of great new contract that any sensible general manager would offer to him.
Yeah, definitely a disappointment in the playoffs. Hall started off the honeymoon with Boston Bruins in the regular season was nice. He scored, I think, 14 points in 16 games. But then when the playoffs came and something needed to happen behind those first line guys, He scored 3 goals in 11 games. That's not enough for a guy like with his caliber. Should have done better, but yeah, like you mentioned, maybe not fielding as many calls as if he would have scored, let's say, point per game like some of the better players in these playoffs have. So very disappointing as well. A little bit in a nutshell how Boston Bruins played. So he got a couple of chances but couldn't do this sort of a play of dominance as we would expect from a player of his caliber.
What do you think about next round? Tampa is waiting. Now they got Islanders as their opponents. Do you think a regaining champion will cruise in 5 games?
It's hard to say. I do think Tampa is a lot better team overall than New York Islanders, but I have said that with many teams. So Islanders have surprised the way that they are capable of playing their own game against these better teams. But how Tampa Bay is playing, it's very difficult team to set up against because they can change their style. They can play very north-south kind of hockey. They can also just keep the puck and keep the control. So next to impossible to counter these sort of things. But then you have Barry Trotz and the hot goaltender, great team spirit going on. You can see that Islanders are now willing to show everyone that they are actually a good team. And even if somebody's been a bit negative about that performance. So I don't know. I would say Tampa Bay is a heavy favorite. Let's see how the simulations think. But Islanders are always ready for surprises, so never count them out. I don't think it's going to be an easy series for Tampa Bay, so maybe 4-2 for Lightning would be a closer guess.
Let's see when we have our simulations running this series as well, what kind of numbers the machine will spit out, and we'll be back in further analysis then. But tonight is the night when Vegas have first chance to oust Colorado to the summer holiday. Game 6 will be played in Vegas tonight. We have here picks for that game, and Colorado must win or go fishing game. 120 plus odds. Colorado is still favored by our simulation. They have been struggling now last 3 games against Vegas. Previous game they were a bit better, but in playoffs puck bounces towards you sometimes and away from you sometimes, and this was Vegas bounces, and they took a 3-2 victory, 3-2 lead in series, but now Colorado needs to win this game in order to continue this series. And our player props, Mikko Rantanen, one of the best scorer during the regular season, have been also playing pretty well during the playoffs, scoring a single goal. Odds plus 178 is very good value because last game he was having few open net opportunities, couldn't capitalize those, but we think that tonight is the night when he can score at least 1 goal.
Yeah, this game is going to be do or die for Colorado Avalanche, and it's going to show. So Colorado is now back against the wall. The way they played in the last game at home against Vegas, which they lost in the overtime. If they played a similar way in Vegas, I think that they are capable of winning the game. It is a coin flip, of course. Vegas, you cannot underestimate Vegas. They have played a great series. They played a great playoff run already. But I do think that Colorado wants to take this one step forward, and that's it. That's all that they can do. They will play the same way. They have their pace. They have their guys. They might now mix the lines a little bit in order not to be so much reliant on McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen. So they might just put these guys in different lines to start with, and then when the opportunity arises, throw them together again, because there is the chemistry with these guys, but they also can bring something to the other lines, whoever they play with. So let's see what happens there. It's an interesting game inside the game, that how Vegas is going to match the lines. Who are they going to play against? Who are they going to have someone man marking Rantanen or McKinnon, which is next to impossible to do. So maybe they're not going to go that way. but interesting to see. In the simulations, we have Colorado for about 54%, so they are favorites even on the road, which is interesting because the last game played in Vegas was probably the first time this season that the simulations actually were having Colorado as underdogs, but now they return to being the favorites, even if they lost the last game. But when you take a look at all the statistics, all the things that affect goal scoring, Colorado should be one step ahead. So now you have to hit those empty netters. Mikko Rantanen especially, because we have beat him in the simulations. He scored 47%. So it's a nice value here with a plus 178 odds. He has scored 4 goals so far, 12 points in 9 games. Not a bad score for one of the better wingers in this league. But these guys need to step up now. It's possibly the last game of the season, so you don't need to leave anything in the tank. Just give it all and score some goals. So I think that's what's going to happen. Probably very similar game as we saw last time in Colorado, that overtime game.
Yeah, these teams have played 5 games. 3 times it has been 3-2, twice out of those in overtime. So very even series, like we have all the time said. And when this winner will go against Montreal, I'm also thinking that this winner will go to Stanley Cup final. So let's see how that guess is realizing.
Yeah, even without running any simulations, I can promise that whichever team will go through here will be favorites against Montreal Canadiens. So it's for Canadiens again to surprise us.
Let's see how the Game 6 in West Honda division goes and who is the winner of that division, if it's decided tonight or if it's then a case of Saturday Night Fever Game 7 in Colorado, if applicable. But tomorrow there's no game scheduled. We won't have our video, but we'll be back then on Saturday if Colorado Vegas game is in schedule, and otherwise when the next game is played.
We'll be back.
See you then.